I want you to use all of your senses. Your body is the best ghost hunting tool that there is. And by that I mean using your sense of hearing, your sense of smell, your sense of touch, your sense of taste, as well as your sight. Paranormal activity is actually very hard to come by. It doesn't happen 24/7. So it is sometimes very hard to predict what's going to happen. Every single tour I have done over the last 5.5 years is very, very different. So this was Australia's oldest and longest operating quarantine station. It was deemed quarantine land in 1833 and only closed down in 1984. When people arrived here, it was to help stop the spread of disease travelling through into Sydney and wiping out new colonies. So people came here if they were suspected to be carrying disease or actually did have disease. The time frame that people were here was around 40 days, but some people were here a lot longer. The longest we have on record was a man that was stuck here for over 120 days. Now in the early days it was the convicts that were coming here up until 1840, and then after 1840, free settlers come in. By 1870, the site had grown so drastically that they had to introduce class definition. So depending on what ticket people purchased on board their ship was how they were treated here at the station. First, second and third class. So it basically came down to how much money you had to how well you were treated in your stay. First, second class got the best food, the best treatment and the best accommodation. The early days there was nothing here though. There was no accommodation buildings and there was certainly no hospitals. The ships acted as the hospitals right up until 1883 when the first hospital was built. So the sick people were left on board the ships to fend for themselves and the healthy people were housed in tents along Quarantine Beach. So for a very long time this place would have been uncomfortable and very makeshift and a very terrifying place to stay. So once the site did start to grow, buildings were put into place and the class definition was put into place, things started to change. But they started to realise that more and more people were dying from these terrible diseases and they had to do something about it. So it wasn't until 1917 that they put the link together between sterilising people's luggage and their belongings once they got off a ship to stop the spread of disease here on site. There's 2 cemeteries here at Kew Station. There is over 572 bodies that are buried between these 3 burial grounds. Now that doesn't sound a lot, especially when according to the history records, over 13,000 people came through Quarantine Station and over 580 boats. So that would account for maybe 1 or just over 1 death per ship. So we do believe that there's a lot more than that 572. We believe that it's close to 2,000 to 3,000, possibly more. They didn't record everybody's deaths down. If they didn't have the money to pay for a tombstone, they most likely didn't get their name recorded. The diseases that were coming through here were highly contagious and they had no cure. The diseases were things like the bubonic plague, otherwise known as the Black Death, scarlet fever, typhus, typhoid fever, whooping cough, cholera, tuberculosis, smallpox, Spanish influenza, yellow fever. But pretty much any highly infectious disease that you can think of would have passed through these gates at one point in another. And as I said, there was no cure. The doctors and nurses were completely helpless to anyone that had these diseases. So that is why I believe that this site is so haunted, and so many people that come and visit this site believe it's so haunted because of the tragic way people die here. They die from horrific, painful diseases, but also being left behind. So people left this site without their loved ones, without their children, and a lot of children died here as well. A lot of children during the 2 epidemics that came through here of smallpox.